this film made Cary Grant. Cary Grant. This was the film that made him an A-list star. He had been in like 23 or 25 or something movies before that and had been known, but not a star like he became later. He was cast as this charming, sophisticated, handsome, gentleman, but was apparently not that interesting other than that, as a character in his previous films. McCarey, who was a very improvisational director, going back to his time in silent comedy, basically would sit at the piano for the first few hours every day. They started this film without a finished script. They started shooting without a finished script, which really freaked out the actors. Grant tried to buy his way out of the production. He's like, if you let me off this, I will do another film for Columbia for free. And Irene Dunne was, for the first few days, supposedly just like bursting into tears multiple times a day. Everybody was just like really freaked out. But within a few days, they realized this guy's a genius. That his way of working was he would make up what they were going to do that day. He would sit at the piano. He had been an inspiring songwriter, had written hundreds of songs. Never his career never took off before he became a director. He would sit at the piano and pick out tunes and sort of think about the problems of that day and how they were going to do these scenes. And then he would dictate lines to the script girl, and then they would go ahead and shoot. But he would also have the actors improvise. So he would, for the first few days, he just had them sit around and trade stories. He would have them improvise their dialogue and choose their own blocking right before turning on the cameras. And this caused a lot of tension and uncertainty at first, but at a certain point, the fact that he was very supportive of the choices that they made really alleviated that tension and helped them to enjoy working with him. And so Cary Grant not only became comfortable improvising, but he often demanded it in future screen and stage roles that he took. So McCarey had a problem with Grant, and they had a problem for a while, but ultimately, partially because of this improvisation, Grant had to develop this character on a deeper level. McCarey would teach him various noises and mannerisms, and Grant would imitate McCarey's mannerisms and his personality, and that's where a lot of his like persona actually came from, because McCarey was also this funny, like charming guy. And McCarey also just gave him more funny dialogue than he had previously gotten, and incorporated more physical comedy than a lot of screwballs had. Cary Grant had been a music hall acrobat or something like that in England, some kind of acrobat, not like a circus, but like more of a theatrical acrobat, I guess. And so he was able to put that grace and those physical pratfall abilities to work. And so what people say is that this movie kind of solidified that Cary Grant persona, which he then went on, which is the one that's recognizable to us, and what he went on to use in all these future screwball comedies.
Yeah, it's on that note, it's remarkable. And I think once you kind of understand it, obviously you don't need to know all that to enjoy the film, but once you kind of start to, if you go back to the film and knowing how much of it was kind of improvised and pieced together, and improvisation is always, kind of, it's a risky proposition, right? Because it really depends on the talent and the intelligence of the actors and their ability to feel out a scene, to really find that groove. And often that can just end in total failure, but the great thrill of seeing improvisation is when it does work, and you get this electric sense of just something totally new kind of emerging into the world purely through the artistic actions of these people responding to each other. And there's moments all through The Awful Truth where you really see this. I'm convinced that you mentioned the kind of like the sounds and the mannerisms and things that Grant and Dunn had to kind of throw out their Hollywood star playbook that they had been successful with up until that point. And just with Grant, you can definitely see the difference if you watch like a film he made the year before, Sylvia Scarlett with by George Cukor. You know, he's quite good and funny in that movie, but it's a totally, you know, you can totally see like he's kind of hemmed in, you know. And I haven't seen a lot of his other earlier performances, but there's a sense of like, yeah, like the Grant that we all know is kind of hemmed in that period, and then after The Awful Truth, he is kind of just free. And so what amazes me about this movie is just the little like even the sounds of breathing, you know, like the sort of the snuffs and snarfles, and it's just very, they're using the whole range of human expression, verbal expression, to create these characters. They're saying things, you know, they have wonderful words at their disposal, but they don't need, they very rarely actually need them. So much of it is about the responses, the gestures, really. It comes down to gestures. And also the verbal, but non-intelligible, sounds that we all make when we are conversing. Right. And again, one of the things I just find so pleasurable about this film is that all those signs really, you know, that are in the hands of the actor, you know, they really become this greater whole. They have this greater poetic power behind them, and emerge the sense of realism and immersion. And it's just just wonderfully fun to experience that. Yeah, I don't know. I just and part of me is, you know, thinking that McCarey, you know, did not talk about this as far as I'm aware very much. I don't think, like a lot of Hollywood directors at the time, you know, he wasn't much of a theoretician, especially of his own work. But you know, I'm convinced that there is you can see through his films, like there is this kind of organic connection of just like who he is and what he wanted to bring to a film, is this greater sense of who people are.
Yeah. Well, Jean Renoir, there's a famous Jean Renoir, who we discussed his film Grand Illusion. He's also known for The Rules of the Game and other of his famous films. He said that Leo McCarey understands people better than anyone in Hollywood. Yeah, and the amazing thing is, probably the best, you know, if that's ever in doubt, watch The Awful Truth and Make Way for Tomorrow back to back. The guy, you know, the man who made those two films in the same calendar year, you know, in some ways I think that those two films almost express the whole possible range of emotional range of what a human filmmaker can do, you know. And it's extraordinary to me that he made those two films, that he had kind of the emotional and spiritual resources to like make those two films, you know, in the same year, and they're both masterpieces. He was an extraordinary artist, and one that, you know, really up until probably the more recently, like certainly within the last 20 years or so, he's finally started to kind of get recognition from film historians and cinephiles as kind of more of the auteur, you know, that he is. There was a period there from kind of his death until the early 2000s or so, where he was kind of ignored in the discourse about the great Hollywood directors. You know, maybe he was recognized as having made a great film here or there, but he wasn't considered like one of the master auteurs like a Howard Hawks or John Ford,
Frank Capra, or any number who have very recognizable traits, you know, in their studio films.